Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'm going to discuss something which I'm sure many of you will be expecting me to, which is related to the letter that was leaked by Michael Gove, the minister in charge of our Brexit preparations, in respect of a number of things, particularly in Kent, but the most incredible of which is that there is to be an effective inland border around Kent. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there's a few things about this, but first of all, let's just get this idea out there. A border around Kent. And when we're talking about a border around Kent, we don't mean, well, of course there's going to be a border at Kent, Phil, because, you know, the border between the UK and the EU, you know, between Kent and France. No, a border around Kent. Between Kent and the rest of the UK. Now, of course, we understood about the border being needed between Great Britain and Northern Ireland as the only way to have diverging customs arrangements from the EU at the same time as complying with the Good Friday Agreement. But a border around Kent. Can you imagine, like a few years ago, before the referendum, there were an awful lot of things that Remain groups were saying, well, in the case of Brexit, this would happen and this would happen and this would happen. And it was all labelled as Project Fear. Now, of course, it's Project Reality. It's either already happened or it is going to happen. And even the government are admitting to it. It's all fine now, apparently. Can you imagine if someone, a few years ago, 2016, before the referendum, if they'd have said, look, you know, if you vote to leave the EU, it's going to mean that you need a passport to get into Kent. That there's going to be a border, a policed border around Kent. That's going to, it doesn't stop everyone. I'll get onto that in a moment. But it's going to stop British people passing from, say, Sussex into Kent. Even Remain groups would have gone, no, let's be serious here. No one would have believed that. That was ridiculous. No one predicted this. Absolutely amazing. So what is the situation? Now, this hasn't just suddenly appeared overnight. This was being talked about for some time. I even covered it myself some months ago. The scenario is as follows. At the moment, we cannot have lorries passing through the port of Dover quickly. At the moment we do. Come January, we're not going to be able to do that. In fact, frankly, from 11 p.m. on the 31st of December UK time, we're not going to be able to do that. So you're going to create huge delays. And if you think about, you know, the lorries that are going through there, at its peak, you get 10,000 lorries passing through Dover a day. At the peak, that's not every single day. If even only 20% of those need, get delayed by just a few minutes, before you know it, you've got delays that last longer than a day. Hence, you're going to have delays lasting for days. And that is what this letter from Michael Gove is talking about, the prospect of delays for days, which is not going to be good. So to try and avoid this, I've come up with all sorts of things. There's the lorry parks to divert lorries to while they're waiting to get to the port. But what they'd also talked about some time ago was not, in order to get the lorries through the port, they want the hauliers to have filled out all the paperwork in advance and all to be done electronically, all digital. So in other words, they need to have used the computer system to have arranged everything. So it'll just be like a license plate scanning type arrangement. And that should allow them to pass through quickly. Now, I have questions about even the validity of that scenario, but let us just say that works. Okay, we're okay with that. I'm okay with that anyway. People with more expertise may be going, well, actually, there are a few things. We'll let those slide. The problem, of course, is that the system's not going to work. And even if it did, maybe lorry drivers aren't using it properly because they haven't had enough time to become accustomed to it. And you can still end up with lorries getting to the port and they haven't done all the paperwork, which means delays, and they're going to gum up the works for everyone else. So what the government said is, like, we're not even going to allow lorries into Kent until they've completed all this digital paperwork. So And the reason why this is now blown up is because people are going, well, how are you going to do this? They've now basically asked, how is this going to be done? And Michael Gove has suggested there's a couple of systems, including the police. It's going to be policed. So the board, we are actually going to have a border around Kent through which lorry drivers, I mean, you know, normal people, I'm not saying that it's going to stop everyone. But if you're in a lorry, for whatever reason, it makes no difference. You might not even be going to Dover or Folkestone. Doesn't matter. If you're even trying to get into Kent, no, you can't come into, you can't come here. But what are you on about? What do you mean I can't pass from one part of England to another part of England? No. We've got a border now. Didn't you know that? Brexit's all about borders. And to be fair, it is. Brexit has always been all about borders. It's all Brexiteers banging on about borders. They love borders so much that even though we're an island, we've got, you know, fairly significant mileage of border, that's not enough for them. They want to create extra borders. So they've created a border within the United Kingdom between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And now, even that's not good enough. They want a border inside England as well. You know, where's this going to end? So but the problem is that the system they're going to use as well, there was a suggestion, is not going to work for foreign registered lorries. It'll only work for British registered lorries. And you think, and I know some foreign lorries are also registered in Britain as well, because you sort of see the different license plates. And I don't know how that will work then. So does that mean that a foreign lorry trying to get into Kent would just pass straight through because nothing would come up as being amiss? Or does it mean that they'd all be stopped even if they had done the paperwork because it's not coming up on the system as having completed the paperwork? Which sounds more likely to me. So you're going to be creating delays also, not just at Dover, but at the main entry points into Kent. Wow. And there'll be people then saying, but Michael Gove is only saying that this is the reasonable worst case scenario. And, you know, reasonable, of course, means it's not outlandish. It could happen, absolutely. But it's still worst case scenario, Phil. Worst case scenario. Worst case scenario means unlikely. Does it? Okay. Normally, I would agree. Absolutely. Worst case scenario would normally mean unlikely as well. But it doesn't necessarily. And in this particular case, I'm going to explain how it's not just... It is the worst case scenario, reasonable worst case scenario. I accept that. But I also would say that it's a very likely scenario. Consider, when they were working out these scenarios, consider the sorts of things that would cause problems in Kent to the point where the government have to put in this border that stops lorries even passing into the county. So things that cause issues. Not getting a deal with the EU. Now, actually, this is one of the less important issues in terms of this, because, of course, even with a full free trade agreement with the EU, we still need to do checks, because the point of the matter is that we're leaving the customs union. We cannot have frictionless trade, even with a comprehensive deal with the EU. However, there are benefits of a deal with the EU that would help, including cooperation, including security arrangements and things like that. Because with the border, it's not all about just checks on goods. We've got security issues. It's not just about standards and whether goods can pass from one market to another. It's about national security on both sides of the border. And we're pulling out of cooperation on that. So that's going to create extra problems. So a deal would help, but we'd still end up with those delays. Then you've got the issue with the system. So we're coming up with a system that is supposed to allow for at least reasonably speedy passage through the border. The problem is that the system doesn't fully exist yet. The system in reality is supposed to be a collection of around about 10 individual systems, all bolted together. And as I'm sure as anyone who's ever had any involvement with systems will know, if you have a system, okay, that system's going to have problems. You test it, you work out your teething problems, eventually it works. Is there enough time to do all that for such a large system? No, there is not. But when you get two systems and these two separate systems need to work together, you have each of the systems individually has its problems, and then there's problems with the bolting on of the two systems. We're having about 10 systems all fitting together, some of which haven't even been made yet. They've not even been built. And some parts of these systems are not even going to be tested publicly until December. So the system's not going to work either. So we're going to have problems. And those problems could be some people trying to complete their paperwork and not being able to. There could be some people who will complete it and they'll be told it's completed, but at some other end of the system, at the Port Authority end of the system, it's not telling them that it's been completed. So you're going to have issues there. And then you've got the other issue that even if the system was working, which it can't be because if it's not even ready yet, and we know because haulage associations are saying that it's an unnecessarily bloated system. Instead of designing a system from scratch, consulting the people who need to use it about what it needs to do and designing a streamlined system, they haven't. They've just kept, every time there's been a problem, they've designed another system for it and bolted it on. Or some of it's not even bolted on yet. It's just stuck on with blue tack for now. And awaiting the bits that aren't ready yet. But, you know, let's say we're all working it, we're all tested, and the system itself was robust, which it is not, but let's say. You still then need to train lots of people in how to use it. Well, they can't really learn how to use it until it's ready. Even when a system is sort of ready-ish, you still have training needs after that because there will be issues with it and things will have to be changed and then people have to update their learning on it. But there will be a situation where a lot of people who need to use the system won't really know how to use it. They'll be using it very inefficiently to begin with. So there's going to be huge problems there as well. And as far as can be told, Michael Gove's main hope here, in order to try and mitigate the damage, is he's sort of saying, well, there's probably going to be lower demand this Christmas anyway because of COVID. So what he's hoping for is for lower economic activity because of COVID. He's going to now see that as a good thing, that we're not going to need as much trade because people won't be buying as much. He's actually hoping for a depressed economic situation at Christmas. Great, nice one. So, absolute madness, isn't it? Absolute madness. This, honestly, everyone knew or should have known that we were going to need border arrangements. We had 4 years of doing nothing to get our borders ready because the government themselves, the Brexiteers, were all saying we're going to have these borders. And yet none of them were saying, should we actually put anything in place? Should we have border guards, for example? Should we expand the infrastructure? But people who were paying attention knew that this would be needed. What nobody would have predicted is inland borders. Inland borders around Kent. That is a new one. That is a genuinely new one. Cannot wait to see what appears. Because bear in mind, once Brexit becomes reality next year, ministers are going to have to face up to an awful lot of new problems that they've previously not faced up to. Cannot wait to see what the knee-jerk reactions to that's going to be. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.